Ask not what your money can do for you, but what you can do for your money. Good morning and welcome to the Financial Optimist. And today we're asking a very important question. Who controls who? Do you work for your money or does your money work for you? So what exactly do I mean by that? Well, here's some examples. Let's say, for example, you had $1 million in a savings account earning 5% interest. You're earning $50,000 per year, which is about what a lot of Americans are making. So in this case, your money is working for you, and you could theoretically afford to retire with, $1 million, assuming you spend less than $50,000 per year. Your money is working for you. But let's say instead you have a house which is worth $400,000 and your mortgage is $2,000 per month. In this case, your money isn't working for you, you're working for your money. Because if you lose your job, you also lose your house. You need to come up with a bunch of money every single month just to barely keep a roof over your head. You're constantly working just to stay alive. So, with that said, when you go back to the main screen here, ask not what your money can do for you, but what you can do for your money. That right there is the key is, in order for your money to work for you, you have to have lots of it. In order to have lots of money, it takes time. Building wealth takes a very long time, but once you've accomplished building the wealth, that's when you can truly let your money work for you. So how do you build lots of wealth? Well, again, what can you do for your money? Not what your money can do for you. Because a lot of people out there ask them, what can I get for my money? What kind of a house can I get? What kind of a car can I get? What kind of food can I get? What kind of computer can I get? What kind of phone can I get? What kind of jewelry can I get? People ask themselves, what can my money do for me? Instead, you should be asking the question, what can I do for my money? Because at the end of the day, you don't own your bank account. Your bank account owns you. You have an obligation to build wealth at a younger age so that way when you're older you can afford to retire. If you don't build any wealth, if you just live paycheck to paycheck, then you're never going to retire, you're never going to have any meaningful money. So with that said, what can you do today to improve your investments, to improve your savings? What can you do to build wealth? And here's the big takeaway. It isn't how much you earn, it's how much you keep. Because at the end of the day, you can build wealth at any income level. You don't have to increase your income to build wealth. All you have to do is decrease your expenses. Yes, a higher income will help you build wealth faster, but if you build wealth, or if you earn a lot of money and you increase your spending, also called lifestyle creep, you never keep any of it. Instead, focus on keeping your expenses small and your income high, and that is how you build wealth. So, when it comes to solutions for how we can make this happen, when you're young, in your 20s and your 30s, you should be working for your money, saving money, building wealth, cutting back on that vacation, take one less vacation a year, buy an older car, rent a cheaper apartment. Do what you can to save some money, keep your expenses down, that way your savings rate can be high. Now, in my opinion, you should have a savings rate of at least 20% or higher if you really want to build wealth with any meaningful amount of speed. If your savings rate is much less than that, say 5 or 10%, you're not really saving that much. You're basically building an emergency fund, but that's about all. If you want to actually build wealth, having a savings rate of 20% or higher is what you need to do. Now here at the Financial Optimist, since I promote the no debt lifestyle, that means I have very few bills. And if you watched my budget breakdown I posted the other day, I spent less than $800 for the entire month of September, which means I have a savings rate of north of 80% because I spend very, very little. I only spend, 15-20% of the paycheck. I save 80-85%, which really helps me to build my wealth very, very quickly. And yes, it is possible to have an insanely high savings rate if you have no debts, and if you live a very simple, very humble life, you don't buy things you don't need, you can have a very high savings rate. If you want to know how I do that, I have plenty of videos where I show all kinds of bargain hunting tutorials, that kind of thing to save money. But when you're young, in your 20s and your 30s, that's what you should be doing. Focus on cutting back. That way, later in life, in your 40s and 50s, that's when your money works for you. That's when you can really enjoy life a lot more, is when you're a bit older in life. So time for a story. Years ago, I used to manage a restaurant, and, we would make the food, sell it to the customers. But there was one thing that really annoyed me. Because at the end of every day, we would always throw food in the dumpster, and I hated doing that. It was such a waste. The food looked delicious, it was edible, it was just made a few hours before, but no one bought it. It was going bad, it had to be thrown away, and I really didn't want to do that. I mean, yes, I would usually hand out the food to some of my employees. Hey, take this home, take that home. I would take some home. I would try to minimize waste that way, but we still threw out a lot of food. Then one day, this man walks in and says, hey, I have an idea. What if all that food you're going to throw in the dumpster, you give it to me, and I'll give that food to the homeless? I'll give the food to the poor. I'll give that food to the hungry. It helps you to eliminate your waste, and it helps to feed the homeless in our community. I thought, great idea. So I talked to, all my bosses and my boss's boss and my boss's boss's boss, and we got it all figured out. At the end of every day, all the food we were going to throw away would go into the refrigerator, and a couple times a week, the man would come by, pick up the food, then he would go find some homeless on the side of the road, give them a bunch of pizzas and, everything else we had, and, he would feed the hungry. And this went on for a while. It did very well. And every time he would come into the restaurant to pick up again, I would ask him, how's it going? And it seems like it was getting better and better over time. He was speaking to other restaurants and grocery stores. He was getting more and more and more food. He was getting some food from here, food from there, food from somewhere else. He was able to feed more people. And I started talking about ideas like, hey, what if you go form like a 501c3 and you make an actual official charity? Maybe go find a couple of local churches and partner with them, because most churches have a kitchen. I said, hey, it gets cold outside during the wintertime, because this is up north where this happened. And, if you want to say have an actual warm building for the homeless to come inside for a few hours in a warm building, you can, use the kitchen to cook the food, heat the food up, warm the food, give them some, fresh food that tastes good, warm food in a warm building on a cold winter's night. That way you could have like an outreach ministry. You can, evangelize to the poor, the homeless, give them some free food, and instead of just, giving them free Bibles, actually, give them something they need, food. And he was starting to work with local churches, starting to get some things figured out. It was really starting to go somewhere. He was maybe thinking of getting some volunteers to help him out. Like this, little like unofficial charity he was running was really starting to go somewhere. And then one day, he walks in and says, you know what? I got some bad news. I'm going to shut the whole entire thing down. So I asked him why. And he said, I just don't have a lot of money. I need to spend more time at work, getting more overtime to pay my bills. Because, this man, he was, I'd say, in his 40s. He had 2 young children. He had a wife. He had a lot of responsibilities, a lot of obligations, a lot of bills to pay. And he didn't have enough time to work the overtime at work and spend time with his family and run the charity. So he had to cut out the charity and focus more on his work because he didn't have enough money. And I learned a very important lesson that day. And that is, none of your life goals, dreams, or visions matter unless you first have the money. If you want to start a charity, you got to have some money first. If you want to run a business, you got to have some money. If you want to have a family, you got to have some money. Everything in life takes money, and lots of it. So if you can first solve the money problem when you're young, then later on in life, you have the time available for doing things you really want to, like starting a charity, handing out pizza to the hungry. And if you've already solved the money problem, if you've been saving through your 20s and 30s, then you want to start some charity in your 40s and 50s, then you have time for it. Otherwise, if you get to the latter years of life and you haven't saved anything, you'll never be able to accomplish anything in life. You'll be stuck there spinning, the hamster wheel of life, living paycheck to paycheck your whole entire life, because you never solved the money problem. And so the lesson I learned that day was, before I do anything in life, first make money. Because once you have lots of money, you have lots of options. Make money when you're young, spend it when you're old. Because if you don't focus on making money, then you'll never be able to accomplish anything else. And so a lot of people out there will say things like, oh, well, money's not important. If you're rich, you might become greedy, so that's not good for you. Well, but honestly, 2025 is a very expensive year to be alive. So in order for basic survival, you really have to prioritize making money as one of the top priorities in life just to survive. If you want to accomplish anything in life, you gotta make lots of money. Otherwise, nothing's gonna happen. So, with that said, thank you for watching. If you have any comments, drop a below in the comment section. I'd love to answer them. Otherwise, have a great day.